Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Traffic Trade Group, and this is your end of day market and trading recap for Tuesday, July 30th. So you could sell on the screen once again, like it's the differences in what's going on right now in the price action is just it's pretty startling, and it's pretty also I don't want to say extreme, but you could quickly just tell the differences in in what kind of day that we're getting here. Look at the semiconductors. We're down 3.8%. They sold off 4.5% over the trading day. That's pretty heavy selling once again in the semiconductors ETF. And then also tech, that's been it's one of those situations that it always comes back to to me in terms of like the buy the dip mentality and basically waiting for things to stop, to find a solid footing, because some of these things have just now been going down now for a couple weeks, and the unwind that we've been seeing in basically AI stocks has been pretty tremendous because this isn't the first day for this. Obviously, this has now been going on, I think, what, 2 weeks. So, maybe we're getting a little bit closer to the end of this. We'll see what Microsoft has to say in their earnings call. That's where they provide their guidance. I think that's kind of an important stock for that group. So we'll see how it behaves. The first reaction was lower, but it is coming back a little bit. Also Arista Networks, which is kind of like an under the radar play in that space too, also went lower, and I think has now gone positive. And wow, well, look at it; it's up to 319. I was talking about that name. Sometimes you could find a little bit of an opportunity. That name was trading down decently. I think the stock closed at 311. It was trading below 300 on really good numbers. And that's also a name that's gone down decently. So you got a nice reversal playing out there as well. So perhaps we're getting closer to the end of the move in the tech stocks, but I'll recap all of it for you in this video, and what we see in the charts. Risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through is for information purposes only, not giving any advice or recommendations. Please read the full risk disclaimer there. And again, take a look at, we've got one more trading day of the month, and look at where we stand in this column over here. This is month to date. So S&P is now negative for the month, right? Down 4/10, and yeah, down 4/10 of a percentage point. I think that's been updated. Small caps have had a banner July up 9.7%, but the Qs are down 4.5% for the month. Right? That's a big move down. The IBD 50 ETF is down 5.6%. Right, a lot of rotation, and it's tough in portfolios where you're owning 50 names to get the rotations right. You've got to be really quickly. You got to be really quick. I know I've had that issue too with my TTG trend portfolio. I reduced my tech and semi-exposed some of my tech exposure about 2 weeks ago. And I took some off. I was overweight the Qs, and I dialed down the position. And then last week, I just got rid of the majority of the stuff because things were just falling too quickly. So let's move and look at value versus growth. Almost mirror opposites. Down 4.2% is growth, and up 4. Wow, you're not going to find that too often. 4.15, 4.15. Right here. So that's also very, very telling, the style drift that we've had so far this month. Okay, so let's take a look at some charts. And the first one that I wanted to start with, and of course then we'll go over some of the after hours movers, but is the VIX. The VIX is up again, and I talked about how it's very funny how this kind of repeated a bit. So first of all, we're not going high, we haven't gone higher than where we were last week. Right. So I think that's number one. That's not bad. Tomorrow you're going to get a Fed meeting, and that will decide whether or not the volatility is really going to come out, or if there's something that Powell is going to say that's going to upset the market a little bit. But we have not gone past last week's highs. Also, another thing that I've said in these videos was how similar this candle was, or this candle that we had, what was this, on Friday? I think today's Tuesday. I think this was Thursday, but very similar to this one, right? So we had this big green candle. We tried to go higher. We didn't, right? And then the next 2 days after this candle also look, again, they're not exactly perfect, but you had this kind of indecision type candle. And then the VIX came in for a second day, provided a hammer bar. Same thing, day after this, fell and then try to go lower again and didn't, and now we've got the VIX moving up. But again, we're so far we are not making we're not making a new high in the VIX, even though volatility was higher today, with the S&P down about 0.5% and the Qs down 1.4%. So I thought that that was interesting today, because sometimes you'll get a little bit of a hint. Let's also just look at the VVIX as well, which is the volatility for the VIX itself. Can't really make too much of a generalization, too much of a conclusion there, other than we have not taken out the highs from last week either, but still, a pretty decent green bar. Let's look at S&P futures and where we are at this point. We did get rejected at the 50-day moving average, but we did not take the 80% bearish 80% rule did get complete today, because it didn't get completed here. It was very close, but it got completed today. As you see, the box is now gray. And we have gotten rejected at that overhead 50-day moving average. So not a position of strength. Any way you cut it, with the S&P 500, not a position of strength below the 50-day moving average, but hanging on by a thread to that bottom of the value area. Also, I've been going through RSP as well. Notice that just the equally weighted S&P ETF has been doing much better. Also, this is something else that will make your head spin. If I can bring this up, because Bloomberg's giving me a little bit of issues here. Let's see if I can. It's not letting me. For some reason, my Bloomberg's not working right now. But I think if you looked at the number of names that made a new, this is so annoying when this does this. But hold on one second. All right, so I can actually look to see in my Substack note that I sent out. By the way, if you're not signed up to my Substack, you should be. It's half of it is free, right? If you want to see my open positions and our watch list and some of our trade setups, then you have to subscribe, which it's super cheap. Now, it's not meant for you to I've been going back with somebody and I get questions about this stuff all the time, right? It's super cheap. It's like $40 a month. I'm not going to give you everything that comes included. I have somebody now who's subscribing and they're thinking that they're going to get everything in the world, right, by subscribing to Substack. It's not for that, right? It's for if you just want to see a glimpse of the market and you want to see things like this that are standing out, like really interesting. There's 125 new S&P 4-week highs today versus only 29 lows. So even though the S&P looks vulnerable, and I mentioned it's not a position of strength, there's a lot of other things going on besides those mega cap tech names. Financials, healthcare, industrials are doing quite well right now. All right, but yes, you could subscribe to my Substack. It's free to see this type, but if you want to see positions, you have to pay a little bit more. But no, you're not going to get you're not going to get trade alerts for $40. So I'll move on from that. But people are out of their mind thinking they're going to get everything that they want for like a couple dollars. Of all the time and effort that many people like myself, full-time traders, put into things like this, you got to pay a little bit more. Granted, and this is the other thing that makes your head spin. I spent $2,700 a month for Bloomberg, right? That's what professionals, most professional traders use in Bloomberg. Now you can get away. A lot of people have diversified from Bloomberg. I'm not advocating Bloomberg or not, but if you're not willing to put in a little bit of money, then I'm not saying you got to pay for a Bloomberg, which is $2,700 a month. But if you're not paying at least like a few $100s to kind of improve, what you're doing, some people want everything for free. Good luck. It doesn't work that way in financial services. So I'll move on from that. I go off on my tangents from time to time. Let's get back to the market. But so that was very interesting to me, and that's why you see this RSP, which is equally weighted Qs, doing pretty well. The Qs are got rejected again right at the bottom of the value area for the month. Right, so that's also in a position of weakness. There's a VPOC down here. Let's take a look at the 1-hour charts too, because I forgot to do this in S&P, but we'll also do this. We're trying to hang on to that bottom of the value area. We're trying to put a let's see what happens with this Microsoft guidance, but right now trying to put in a hammer bar right around that bottom of the value area. Also for the S&P. Right, so this is just a little bit of short-term support. It's not something to go crazy with and say, oh my God, we've got support. But for now, we're holding some short-term support. Also, you could see that the S&P is just trying to, we opened up inside the month. We're trying to hold this little bit of support here, right? And then IWM, which again, I think IWM will really hinge on what Powell says tomorrow, right? There's been a lot that's been built into this move in IWM, right? On the belief that we're going to have rate cuts, right? So Powell has to back that up tomorrow. If not, if Powell doesn't give a super dovish speech tomorrow, then or somebody slips him up during the Q&A, then I think IWM is very vulnerable. Now, if he is dovish and he says, "Hey, we're gonna cut interest rates in September, and we're probably going to go again," then it's probably the status quo for IWM, and it may continue to outperform, right? But I really think that's what you've got going on in IWM. Again, considering like I think part of the movement and what's going on has been going on in IWM and things like the regional bank ETF is positioning where people were short a lot of these things. And number two, it's based on what the Fed is up to. All right. And we'll hear more about that tomorrow. I mentioned I was going to bring up the semiconductor ETF, which had another big down day. So yes, that's now from 280 to 230, right? And that takes out the lows. This was something that I thought we might hold on to, but there is another VPOC down here lower. We could also possibly still stay above this, depending on, I think AMD reported, last I checked, AMD is up a little bit. And you could see that the semi ETF is trying to hold on to that bottom of value for the week as well. So again, a lot of things kind of hinging. Let's see where AMD is right now. I think they also provide guidance in their earnings call. They're getting a nice little lift. Also, NVDA is also, I see, has went red and has also come back and went green. So if you're trying to position in some of these things, I'm just kind of showing you what's going on here. All right, I mentioned Arista Networks. Right. But again, these stocks, just because they're moving up, right, you've got to be really, in my opinion, you've got to be very patient with what's going on here, right? This may be a good buying opportunity, but it's way too early to focus on that. So what did well today? More value type names. I don't have KIE in here, but that's been something that we went over, like I went over pretty decently in the weekend review for TTG members, right? We've seen this before. We've seen that these insurance companies have really good performance. Look at the breakout going on here. Now, again, I hear from all the time, like, people who are just, fixated on growth companies. That's fine. You could be fixated on growth companies and that's your bread and butter, but that doesn't mean that you can't go long a Berkshire Hathaway. It doesn't mean that you can't go long a Chubb, CB, right? The growth guys always have to find the one name that's a growth name, even in a value sector. I don't really understand it, but I get that's what people do. Like people go nuts for this Trumpanion. Oh my God, there's short interest. It's a growth name. Da 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 da. Fine, you could do that, but you could also pick, various. It's almost every name in the group that's doing pretty well. So, again, it's a little bit more of a defensive theme. I think that you don't want to overstay your welcome. I would long some PGR. All right, there's a couple other names too that are in this space. The one name that's been one name that's been on fire. This is a smaller cap insurance name. This is Erie Indemnity. Look at this thing, 390. That's up $50, right? So again, the fascination with growth stocks and thinking, oh my God, you're going to make big returns. Some of these things you can make big returns too. I mean, 380 to 430 in a couple days is nothing to sneeze at, right? AJG is another name too. Look at this name perform and what it's been doing, right? Another name that's not financial, but BR is another one that's been acting really well. This is Broadbridge. I came into today with, also long some Goldman, was able to take another target in this one. JP Morgan got going today, right? So that's another name. And so the financials like just did not experience any of that volatility that you saw in other places. So I thought that was very positive. Other areas, I don't know if I'm going to cover much else here in sectors. I want to just cover a couple names, as I mentioned, reporting earnings. These are the names that are up. VST and CEG, there's a story out about this, about power plant and funding. And there's your other gainers so far. Looks like Match is up a little bit. That's a tough name to play. NRG is also up on that story as well. Again, I can't switch screens on here. Power is also up a little bit on that name as well. So guys, I'll leave it there for now, but ultimately, like, we continue to build out our earnings list. There's a lot of names that are reporting really good earnings. There's a lot of good earnings reactions. You just have to be open to playing, various different sectors to kind of capture some of the moves. All right, guys, that is it. Have a great night, and see you tomorrow.